First contact, fatal mistake. In the cold darkness of deep space, a group of alien ships floated silently near a dead star. They belonged to the Zark Collective, a powerful alien empire known for controlling large parts of the galaxy. Their mission today was simple: investigate a strange object drifting near the edge of the system. The object was a warship, old, damaged, and silent. It had no power readings, no life signs, and no identification. Its design didn't match any known alien technology. The Zark scientists were curious. From a safe distance, they began to scan the ship using long-range sensors. "It looks human," said one of the alien crew members. "Impossible," replied the captain. "Humans are extinct. We wiped them out 70 years ago." Still, something about the ship made the crew uneasy. This black surface absorbed all light. Its sharp edges looked more like a weapon than a vessel. Yet, it just floated there, silent, harmless, and forgotten. The Zark scanners went deeper. They tried to map the ship systems. They looked for energy cores, weapons, and life signs. But the moment their scans touched a certain part of the ship, a small device near the rear engine, everything changed. Inside the ship, red lights came on. A system woke up. A soft voice spoke in an ancient Earth language, then switched to universal translation. Unauthorized scan detected. Countermeasures engaged. The aliens didn't understand at first. Then one of their scout ships exploded. No weapons were fired. No signals were sent. 1 second the ship was there. The next it was just gone, like it had been erased from space. Panic spread across the alien fleet. Orders were shouted. Engines roared to life. But before they could react further, the dark warship began to move. It turned slowly, almost like it was watching them. Its engines glowed with a soft blue light. The name on its side, hidden for decades, lit up for the first time in years. USS Omen. Inside the warship, something else stirred. A cryochamber opened with a hiss. A man opened his eyes, strong, focused, confused. He was wearing a black and silver uniform, marked with the symbol of Earth's lost military. His name was Commander Reyes. He looked around. Everything was cold, dark, and quiet, except for a single red light blinking in front of him. Then the ship's AI spoke. "Good morning, Commander. You have been asleep for 73 years. Reyes sat up, alert. "Status report. We were in stealth mode. We have now been scanned by Zark vessels. Protocol 7 was triggered. You have been awakened." Reyes stepped out of the cryochamber and walked to the main control room. Holograms lit up around him. He saw the alien ships, the scan logs, and the destroyed scout ship. He narrowed his eyes. "Zark, I thought we were finished with them." The AI replied, "They believed we were extinct. They were wrong." Outside, the Zark fleet was trying to retreat. Some ships were already turning back. But it was too late. The Omen systems were fully online now. Shields activated. Weapons charged. Engines prepared for battle. Reyes tapped the control panel. "Don't attack yet. Let's watch them panic a bit." The AI smiled through its digital voice. "As you wish, Commander." The warship followed the alien fleet silently, almost like a ghost in space. No signals were sent. No lights were on. The aliens couldn't tell what the human ship was doing, but they knew it was watching them. Inside the Zark command ship, fear spread fast. The captain called for help. Messages were sent to the Empire, but deep down they already knew what this meant. The humans had returned. Back on the Omen, Reyes was watching closely. His mind was sharp, his voice cold. "Let them run," he said. "Let them warn the others. Let the whole galaxy know." He paused and looked at the glowing symbol of Earth above the command screen. "That humanity still fights." The AI spoke again. "Commander, their remaining ships are preparing to jump to hyperspace." Reyes nodded. "Let them go. We'll find them again." Then he turned and walked toward the war room, the place where Earth's final missions were planned before the fall. He knew this wasn't over. This was just the beginning. Somewhere in the galaxy, the Zark Empire still ruled. They had killed billions of humans. They had burned Earth's colonies. They had thought the war was over. But they made a mistake. They scanned the wrong ship, awakening the beast. The silence inside the warship Omen was deep, like the stillness before a storm. Commander Reyes stood alone on the command deck, staring into the dark emptiness of space where the Zark fleet had fled. The room around him glowed with faint blue lights from old screens and flickering data modules, dust collecting on surfaces untouched for decades. The soft hum of power systems returning to life was the only sound in the chamber, as the ship slowly emerged from its long slumber. It was like waking up a monster, not from a dream, but from a long, bitter hibernation. One filled with rage, loss, and forgotten vengeance. Reyes took a slow breath and began pacing the deck, his boots echoing against the metal floor. The ship's AI, Astra, continued feeding him updates in a calm, emotionless tone, describing the movements of the fleeing alien ships and the reactivation of critical systems across the warship. Yet beneath the surface of that machine voice, there was something else, a sharpness, an edge, as if even the AI itself remembered the war that had brought them to this place. The systems that had once powered Earth's deadliest ship were now humming with purpose again, and Reyes could feel it in every vibration through the hull. As he walked into the ship's war room, a circular chamber surrounded by holographic projectors and deep data vaults, the lights grew brighter. Maps of the galaxy slowly appeared around him, showing star systems now marked with the red symbol of the Zark Empire. These were the same stars that once held Earth's colonies: Terra Nova, Eden Prime, Arcadia, and dozens more. All gone. All erased. Reyes felt a pressure in his chest as he looked at the names. Not just anger, something deeper. Responsibility. Guilt. He had been asleep while his people were hunted and destroyed. And now only he remained. 73 years. He muttered, his voice low. And they still fear us. Astra responded. Their scan was not just curiosity. The Zark are still hunting for remnants of human technology. They never trusted that we were completely destroyed. Their empire was built on the ashes of Earth. If we return, their rule collapses. Reyes clenched his fists, then opened a secure file labeled Protocol Black. It was a contingency plan designed by the Earth Defense Command in the final weeks of the Human-Zark War. Only high-ranking officers like Reyes had access to it. The file contained intelligence gathered in secret, a prediction that the Zark Empire would splinter without a unifying enemy, and that fragments of humanity could rise again if given time. The Omen had been hidden as part of that plan, deep in enemy space, waiting to awaken if ever detected. Reyes realized now, he wasn't just the last soldier. He was the spark meant to reignite the flame. Outside the ship, space was quiet, but not safe. The surviving Zark ships were likely sending messages back to their command, reporting the impossible, a human warship still active, still deadly. Astra confirmed as much, noting multiple communication spikes heading toward the central systems of the Empire. Reyes knew what that meant. Reinforcements would come. Scientists, soldiers, hunters, maybe even high-level commanders. They would want to understand how the Omen survived. They would want to capture it, study it, strip it down, and then erase it forever. But Reyes wasn't planning to hide. He moved toward the captain's chair and sat down slowly, feeling the weight of the moment. With a single command, he initiated the full battle-ready status of the Omen. Weapons charged silently beneath the hull, plasma arrays, rail cannons, EMP blasters, and something far older. A classified weapon known only as the Singularity Lance. A piece of tech even the Zark had never encountered. The ship vibrated as systems aligned, engines prepared, and the AI took full control of targeting. "Commander," Astra said, "would you like to strike?" Reyes looked at the map. There was a Zark listening post on the edge of the system. Small, weak, but critical for relaying messages. He smiled faintly, and his voice was like steel. "Let's remind them who we are." The Omen vanished in a blur, moving faster than light toward the outpost. In seconds, they arrived, hovering silently like a phantom just beyond visual range. The Zark station was already scanning space nervously, its crew unsure if the reports they'd received were real or hallucinations caused by deep space stress. Before they could raise shields or send another signal, the Omen fired one round from its main cannon, not to destroy but to send a message. The blast didn't hit the station, but a nearby moon. The surface cracked apart in a chain reaction, sending waves of destruction echoing across the stars. The Zark outpost went silent. They knew what it meant. Back aboard the warship, Reyes stared into space. He wasn't just going to survive. He was going to make the Zark remember the name human. He was going to hunt the ones responsible. And he would do it with the quiet, unstoppable rage of someone who had lost everything and had nothing left to fear. The beast had awakened. The human counterstrike. In the hours following the destruction of the Zark outpost moon, the galaxy seemed to shift. Signals that had once flowed freely across space began to go dark. Panic and confusion spread among Zark relay stations as they received only fragmented transmissions, whispers of a human ship, a black phantom that destroyed entire structures without a trace, a ghost vessel from a war they believed had ended a generation ago. But in truth, the war hadn't ended. It had only paused, waiting, hibernating, preparing. And now, in the cold silence of space, humanity had struck back. Aboard the Omen, Commander Reyes stood in front of the tactical projection table, watching the map of nearby systems light up with new intel. Astra, always precise and calm, detailed the Zark fleet movements with clinical accuracy. Reinforcements were being deployed from a nearby military base in the Ralkar system, a heavy cruiser group designed for fleet suppression and colony lockdowns. Reyes recognized the unit insignia. These were the same ships responsible for wiping out the human colony of Meridian Prime during the final days of the war. He remembered the images. Families burned alive in underground shelters, evacuation ships blasted out of the sky, children executed because they carried Earth's DNA. Reyes' jaw tightened as he watched the incoming fleet path. This wasn't just defense. It was personal. He didn't intend to engage them directly, at least not at first. Reyes knew that brute force wouldn't win this fight. The Omen was powerful, an apex predator of Earth's forgotten navy, but it was still just one ship. To win, he had to be smarter, faster, and more ruthless than anything the Zark had faced before. And he knew just how to begin. "We're going to cut out their eyes," he said quietly. Astra responded with a list of known Zark surveillance buoys, sensor nets, and relay drones spread across the sector. In less than an hour, Reyes had crafted a plan. A silent strike on their entire local communications web, disabling their ability to track or even understand what was happening. The operation began in darkness. The Omen moved like a ghost through asteroid fields, nebula shadows, and radiation belts, places where sensors failed and only dead ships dared to go. Using its advanced stealth systems and gravitic drives, the warship danced between Zark networks, unleashing electromagnetic pulses that crippled their surveillance with surgical precision. No alarms were triggered. No enemy ships detected the attacks. Within 4 hours, the sector went blind. Zark command centers across the quadrant began scrambling for answers, unsure if they were facing sabotage, internal failure, or something far worse. They had no idea that the legend they feared had returned, and was already inside their borders. Back on the Omen, Reyes watched the chaos unfold from his seat in the command chamber. He wasn't smiling. There was no satisfaction in this. What he felt was colder, purpose, precision. He was rebuilding the reputation of humanity, one shattered enemy system at a time. "They thought we were animals," he said aloud, not needing a reply. "They thought we fought with rage and noise. But this is how we remind them. Quiet, clean, unstoppable." But Astra had been busy with something else as well. During the infiltration, the AI had intercepted a Zark transmission, a secure data burst sent from their command ship just before the surveillance grid collapsed. It contained a partial video log, distorted and shaky, showing Zark soldiers reacting in panic to sensor readings. But more importantly, it captured something rare: audio. In the background of the recording, a Zark officer shouted to his crew in fear, "The humans have returned. We scanned it. It scanned us back." It knew. That last word echoed in Reyes' mind. It knew. Not just reacted. Not just defended. The Omen had analyzed the Zark scan and retaliated in a calculated response. It meant the ship, even dormant, had been aware, watching, listening, waiting. Astra confirmed this. During deep sleep, defensive subroutines remained active. They detected the scan, analyzed Zark technology, and assessed a threat rating. Had you not awakened, the ship would have executed defensive protocols autonomously within the next 30 minutes. Reyes leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling for a long moment. So the warship didn't need me, he whispered. It would have fought without me. Astra's voice softened slightly. It would have fought, yes, but it would not have led. The words hit hard. Reyes wasn't just a commander. He was the last example of what humanity had once stood for: defiance, brilliance, mercy when earned, and wrath when necessary. The Zark had stripped his species of everything, but they had not taken away his will. He would not simply fight to survive. He would fight to win. Outside the Omen, far across the system, the Zark fleet finally arrived at the relay station that had gone silent after Reyes' first attack. Their sensors picked up nothing. Their scans revealed no debris, no sign of battle, no clues. It was as if the outpost had never existed. Then suddenly, every ship's main display blinked once, then twice. The entire fleet paused. A video had been forcefully injected into their systems, overriding security. On every screen, a short clip began to play. It showed a human soldier, Commander Reyes, standing atop rubble, a scorched earth flag waving behind him. His face was calm. His words, clear and deadly. This is your only warning. Leave, or be buried with your lies. Before the fleet could respond, their long-range drives began to malfunction one by one. It wasn't a glitch. The Omen had already hacked their propulsion systems and installed a silent virus during the scan. They were stranded, vulnerable. Astra ended the message with a timestamp. Your death arrives in 1 hour. Inside the enemy. As the trapped Zark fleet struggled to reboot their crippled systems and failed to call for backup, the Omen had already vanished into the dark corridors of deep space, silent and unseen. Its engines left no trace, and its presence was more like a shadow than a vessel. Inside, Commander Reyes stared at a live hologram of the enemy ships still drifting helplessly near the ruined station. He didn't watch with joy or revenge. He watched with calculation, trying to understand not just how to win, but how to break the illusion of Zark control. Simply destroying ships wasn't enough. Fear was spreading, yes, but it was scattered, disconnected. What he needed now was something bigger, something that would shatter their confidence from the inside. Not just another attack, but exposure. Astra had already mapped several critical Zark installations in nearby systems. Most were heavily fortified, patrolled by destroyers and monitored by automated defense grids. But there was one, hidden inside a gas giant's orbit, known only through encrypted transmissions. Volaris Station, a central intelligence archive and bioresearch lab rumored to be involved in genetic studies and post-human experiments. Astra found disturbing hints of files labeled Project Ghostframe, and even worse, references to something called the Human Suppression Protocol. It was here Reyes believed that the Zark stored what they had learned from the war, and possibly what they feared most. Infiltrating Volaris Station wouldn't be easy, even with the Omen stealth systems. Unlike battlecruisers or patrol ships, intelligence stations were built for secrets, surrounded by layered scanning fields and motion mines, with live monitoring from deep inside the Zark intelligence core. But Reyes had a plan. Astra had intercepted the signal from a nearby Zark scout ship shortly after the first attack. It was lightly damaged, still transmitting basic navigation data, and most importantly, still being tracked by the Empire. Reyes had the Omen intercept the vessel, disable its crew without killing them, and strip the hull for signal masking. He would ride in using the enemy's own blind spot. With the disguise complete and the virus embedded to reroute scans, the Omen slowly approached Volaris Station under the digital mask of a friendly Zark vessel. The station itself was enormous. A skeletal ring wrapped around a black moon, lit with pale blue veins and constant signal activity. Its design was cold, mechanical, and inhuman. No windows, no bridges, no beauty, only function. It was the heart of the Empire's mind. As they approached docking range, Astra adjusted the ship's signature to mirror the exact energy readings of the scout ship. The station opened a port without hesitation. That was their mistake. Once docked, Reyes moved quickly. Wearing an environment suit equipped with a personal stealth field, he entered the belly of the station through an old maintenance tunnel designed for drone repairs. The air was stale and heavy, the walls humming with power and surveillance equipment. He moved through narrow corridors, avoiding cameras, tracking patrols through Astra's live feeds. Every step brought him deeper into the machine, the place where the Empire's lies were born. He reached a data core chamber after nearly 40 minutes of silent infiltration. Inside, rows of neural data arrays pulsed with faint white light. He inserted a spike module, a piece of black hardware built by Earth engineers long ago, now obsolete in every other part of the galaxy. Here it worked perfectly. Within seconds, Astra began pulling terabytes of encrypted data, decrypting as she went. What they found was worse than Reyes imagined. Project Ghostframe was not just a research operation. It was a psychological warfare program built entirely around understanding and exploiting the human mind. The Zark had studied survivors, prisoners, captured soldiers, even children. They had run simulations, built training programs, and analyzed every human weakness. But the files revealed something more terrifying: fear. The Zark weren't just trying to understand humans, they were terrified of them. In several intercepted high command memos, it was clear that the upper Zark leadership believed humanity possessed an unpredictable evolution trait, something that allowed them to adapt, endure, and strike back in ways no other species could. One line repeated across multiple documents like a warning: if even one warship remains, the cycle begins again. Reyes stood in the chamber, surrounded by the cold proof of everything humanity had suspected. The war hadn't been a fair fight. It had been a genocide built on fear. The Zark didn't conquer Earth to expand. They did it because they were afraid of what humans could become. Reyes didn't feel pride. He felt fury. But now he had something more powerful than weapons. He had the truth. On his way out, Reyes triggered a silent upload. The data Astra pulled from the station's core would be broadcast to multiple fringe systems, worlds living under Zark rule, some still populated by hybrid species or broken colonies. He didn't just want the Empire to know he was alive. He wanted the galaxy to know why humanity had been hunted. And he wanted others to ask themselves a dangerous question. If the Empire feared the humans this much, then who were the real monsters? Reyes exited the station as quietly as he had entered, returning to the Omen without detection. The ship pulled away just as Zark technicians noticed something strange in their data logs. But by the time they traced the breach, it was too late. Astra had already cleaned their tracks and injected false files to confuse their investigators. The Omen once again became a shadow, untraceable and terrifying. Back on the bridge, Reyes stood before the Earth banner once more. He didn't need speeches. He didn't need applause. He only needed one thing now: targets. The ghosts of Earth. The stars hadn't changed. They still burned silently, cold and beautiful, scattered across the black like ancient lanterns watching history repeat itself. But something beneath them had changed. Across systems ruled by the Zark, across mining colonies, slave stations, research hubs, and forgotten frontier worlds, something had shifted. There was a new frequency pulsing across the dark, silent at first, only picked up by deep listening relays and backchannel tech. It wasn't a command. It wasn't propaganda. It was a memory, a message pulled from the ashes of a fallen world, stitched together from Earth's final transmissions, and broadcast on every wavelength the Omen could hijack. Inside the broadcast was raw truth. The footage began with flickering images: cities burning, colony ships exploding in orbit, soldiers fighting with knives and fists when ammo ran out, and families huddled underground as Zark war machines burned through steel and soil. It was not staged. It was not cleaned. It was pain. It was resistance. It was the death of a world refusing to kneel. And through it all, voices cut through the static. A woman shouting into a camera, her voice cracking, "Even if we fall, remember who we are." A soldier bleeding out, whispering to his squad, "Tell them Earth didn't beg." A child's drawing taped to a destroyed escape pod, showing a planet surrounded by stars, and the words, "We'll come back." Reyes watched silently from the Omen's bridge as the message went live across 17 sectors. He didn't blink, didn't flinch. He had chosen every frame, every line, every scream. Astra had pulled them from Earth's war archives, filtered through the ruins of command ships and downed relay stations. They weren't meant to inspire pity. They were meant to reveal the truth. The Zark had lied for decades, telling their empire that humanity was savage, unstable, broken, that Earth had destroyed itself. But this footage tore through that illusion like fire through paper. It showed a people pushed to the edge and still choosing to fight. It showed strength, not madness. It showed unity under fire. And above all, it showed that the Zark hadn't won a war. They had silenced a future they feared. What Reyes didn't expect was what came next. Within hours of the message going live, strange responses began flooding into the deep space relay Astra had activated. At first, they were garbled, weak signals, encrypted chatter, burst transmissions with no source ID. Then, clearer voices. A freighter captain from a fringe world whispering, "We thought you were a myth." A group of exiled engineers on a mining moon crying openly as they watched the footage, sending coordinates and offering aid. A hybrid resistance cell, half alien, half human descendants from a lost colony, pledging to rise if Reyes called for it. The wave had begun, and Reyes understood now that this wasn't just about revenge. This was about reclaiming memory, identity, legacy. In the Zark capital system, panic ignited behind closed doors. The ruling council, previously confident that the human threat had been buried forever, now faced a storm of unrest. Mid-tier commanders began questioning intelligence reports. Civilian populations, especially among hybrid species and those who had once traded with Earth, started asking dangerous questions. Riots broke out on 2 satellite colonies. Soldiers began hesitating when asked to enforce silence. In one case, a Zark officer was executed by his own crew for attempting to jam the human transmission. The cracks were spreading faster than anyone had predicted. Back on the Omen, Reyes stood before a massive holographic display of the galaxy, now marked with over 100 pinging signals. Each one a response, a flare, a voice from the dark saying, "We remember." Astra, her voice now carrying the faintest edge of emotion, reported, "Rebel activity has increased by 340% since the transmission. Civilian unrest is growing in 8 major systems. Resistance movements once thought extinct are requesting contact. The symbol of Earth is being used across dozens of communication streams. You are being called the Ghost of Earth." Reyes didn't react at first. The title sounded heavy, mythic, unreal. But perhaps that was the point. He was no longer just a man. He had become a symbol, the unfinished story of a species erased too soon. The Zark had built an empire on fear. Now Reyes would weaponize that fear against them. But even symbols needed plans. Even ghosts needed purpose. So he began preparing the next move. He would no longer hide in the shadows of forgotten systems. He would take the fight to the heart of the empire. But not with brute force alone. With truth, with exposure, and with the growing army of voices that the Zark had silenced for too long. He would strike at their control centers, their communication cores, their psychological warfare facilities, cutting the empire not where it was strongest, but where it believed itself invincible. He would spread the idea that the Zark could bleed, and that humanity was not dead, but reborn in the silence they left behind. And so the Omen set course for the Arcani's line, a heavily fortified chain of defense stations guarding the path to the Empire's core worlds. Astra warned it was suicide. Reyes disagreed. "No," he said quietly, staring into the stars. "It's history correcting itself." Before the jump, Astra added one final note. "A rebel fleet, origin unknown, has sent a coded message. 6 ships, armed, waiting for orders." Their message was one word: ready. Reyes didn't smile, but something in his eyes shifted. The fire was back. Not rage, not revenge, but something sharper. Purpose. With a calm voice, he gave the only command needed. "Then let's begin." War begins again. The galaxy had not seen open war since the fall of Earth. After the last human colonies were silenced, The Zark Empire's control had become absolute, not through peace, but through pressure, military presence, psychological dominance, and fear of what happened to those who resisted. Entire species were crushed without battles. Whole systems surrendered at the sight of a Zark destroyer. Over decades, rebellion became fantasy, and history was rewritten by those who still held the guns. But all of that began to crack the moment the Omen reappeared. And now, it was no longer about signals in the dark or messages from ghosts. The time for words was ending. The time for war had returned. Commander Reyes stood on the command deck of the Omen, watching as 6 rebel ships moved into formation around him. They were not impressive vessels, modified cargo haulers, decommissioned patrol cruisers, a few outdated stealth ships, but they were alive, armed, and loyal. Each had answered his call after the truth about Earth spread across the stars. Their crews were not trained soldiers. They were exiles, smugglers, engineers, and colonists who had been stepped on too many times. But every one of them carried a reason to fight. They were angry, desperate, and now united under a single purpose: strike the Empire while it staggered in confusion. The first target wasn't a colony or a shipyard. It was the Arcani's Line, a series of Zark defense stations built across a narrow sector of space acting as a choke point to the Empire's core systems. It had never been breached. It wasn't meant to be. Massive automated turrets, sensor grids, and orbital mines made direct attack suicidal. But Reyes had no interest in attacking it the way Zark intelligence expected. He wasn't here to break through. He was here to turn it against itself. The plan was built on precision. Astra, feeding off captured Zark code from the Valera station infiltration, had identified key weaknesses in the network: the relay timing between defense towers, the blind spot in their security ping cycle, and the unguarded maintenance array buried beneath the thermal core of Station 9. Reyes didn't need to blow up the line. He needed to take control of one station, upload a virus, and let the Empire's own machines do the rest. If it worked, the Arcani's Line would turn inward, seeing every nearby friendly ship as an enemy and firing on its own defenders. The Empire would think it was a coordinated internal rebellion. Reyes wanted paranoia, chaos, distrust. He wanted the Zark to be afraid of their own shadow. The operation began with silence. The rebel fleet moved in under a timed burst jump pattern, using the Omen's cloaking field as cover. Station 9's outer sensors didn't even register the breach. Reyes led a boarding team himself, something Astra advised against, but he insisted. He wouldn't order others to walk into fire if he wouldn't do it himself. The boarding pod sliced into the outer hull like a scalpel, ejecting Reyes and his 4-person squad into the heart of a place where no human had stepped in 70 years. Inside, the station was clinical and cold, all smooth black surfaces and pulsing data lines. Zark soldiers were fast to respond, but not fast enough. Reyes moved like a ghost, his armor adapted for low-visibility environments, each shot clean and calculated. His team made no noise. They didn't need to. Every corridor they cleared was left untouched, so the station remained unaware of the invasion until it was already over. They reached the command core in under 6 minutes. Astra's uplink began transmitting the control virus. In less than 20 seconds, the station's security grid rebooted, quietly switching identification parameters, reversing friend and foe tags, and initiating a false alarm protocol that sent every other station into panic mode. Then came the masterpiece. A deepfake command message, generated from a Zark admiral's voice pattern, was broadcast to the rest of the Arcani's Line, accusing Station 7 of initiating a betrayal. The result was instant. Defensive platforms turned. Turrets locked onto each other. Orbital mines detonated in clusters, breaking the formation. Within minutes, the proud shield of the Empire became a storm of fire and self-destruction. Reyes and his team extracted before the fighting fully erupted, launching back to the Omen under cover of the chaos. From his bridge, he watched as the sky lit up with arcs of blue plasma, metal fragments, and bodies drifting into nothingness. And for the first time in 73 years, the Zark Empire's defense network had collapsed in real time, on record, in front of their entire military command. It was not only a victory, it was humiliation. But Astra's tone grew serious. In the aftermath of the attack, a deeper signal was picked up, buried beneath the military traffic, something encrypted and ancient, originating from within the Zark's central authority. It was not a counterattack order. It was not reinforcement coordination. It was an alert labeled only Protocol 0. Astra traced its path. It was activating a deep archive facility known only in forgotten military files, something built before the human-Zark war, even before first contact. The AI paused, and her voice dropped. Commander, the Empire is awakening something buried. A failsafe. Reyes didn't hesitate. What kind of failsafe? I do not know. Predates known warfare protocols. But it is not mechanical. There was silence on the bridge as the implications settled. The Zark were not just reacting with panic. They were reaching into their own past for something darker. Something even they had hoped never to use. Perhaps humanity had always been a mirror, not just of power but of fear. Perhaps the Empire had hidden more than just history. Reyes stared into the starlight, jaw clenched, eyes cold. He had planned for war. He had not planned for what came before it. Then we hit them harder, he said. Before they wake it fully, humanity returns. The space between stars had always been silent, but now that silence trembled with something ancient. Not fear, not anger, but memory. Across the galaxy, the aftershock of the Arcani's line's collapse still echoed. Entire systems had gone dark, Zark fleets recalled from outer colonies, loyalist governors executed by their own soldiers. The Empire's propaganda machine struggled to explain what had happened. No rebel fleet had stormed their gates. No invasion force had landed. It had all begun with a message. A voice, a face, a ship, and now, at the center of it all, a final storm was coming. The Omen, long thought destroyed, long buried in the ash of Earth's fall, was on a direct course to the Zark homeworld, and it was not coming alone. The fleet behind it was no longer a few desperate rebels in old ships. It had grown into a true force. Dozens of vessels from fractured colonies, hidden stations, species that had lived under Zark control for decades, and now saw hope where there had once been only silence. There were no uniforms, no official flags, no central command. Just a shared cause. Follow the last human into fire, and break the chains that had bound the galaxy for generations. They called themselves the Returned. And at their center, like a blade leading the charge, flew the Omen, silent, black, and invincible. But deep within the Zark core, the Empire was already preparing its answer. Protocol 0. What Astra had uncovered was not a weapon in the traditional sense. It was something worse, older than the Empire, older even than the Zark race in its current form. Buried beneath the surface of their capital world was a being, or perhaps a system, that the Zark had once worshipped, then feared, then sealed away after it began to evolve beyond control. A synthetic organic intelligence known in ancient Zark texts as Warship, the deep binder. It was neither god nor machine, but something in between, something designed to ensure that the Empire would never fall, even if its people did. It had been sealed when the Zark became afraid of it. Now, as the Omen approached, that fear had turned to desperation. They woke it up. The skies above the Zark capital began to burn before Reyes even arrived. Warship did not act like a conventional defense system. It reached into the minds of nearby commanders, infecting their thoughts, merging logic with instinct, replacing fear with devotion. It did not command ships, consumed them. Entire fleets turned in unison, no longer under orders from living admirals, but from the will of something deeper, ancient code wrapped in belief. Astra struggled to predict their movements. Their patterns no longer followed military doctrine. They fought like organisms, swarming, adapting, sacrificing ships to protect the center. Reyes stood on the bridge of the Omen, watching it unfold. This wasn't war. This was infection, not biological but ideological. The Zark had created a monster to save themselves, and now they were being absorbed by it. But Reyes didn't flinch. He had seen extinction up close. He had watched Earth burn. He had stood on ash and swore that if humanity ever rose again, it would never be silent. And now, with a weapon forged from every war they had lost, He was going to carve that vow into the bones of a dying empire. The plan was impossible, and so it was perfect. Astra had located the primary node of Viarachnal deep beneath the capital. A quantum core built into the planet's mantle, unreachable by ordinary weapons. But the Omen had never been ordinary. Hidden in its arsenal was the Singularity Lance, a forbidden weapon designed to punch through the crust of a planet and collapse artificial energy fields. Reyes had never fired it. It had never been tested. It might kill them all, but that no longer mattered. The rebel fleet launched a diversionary assault, drawing the swarming enemy into orbit. It was suicide, and they knew it. Ships were torn apart by nanoflechettes, boarded by possessed Zark crews, melted by plasma webs. But they held long enough. The Omen dove alone through the lower atmosphere, surrounded by chaos and fire, pushing its way toward the surface like a falling god. Anti-orbital cannons fired blindly, screaming across the sky. Still, the warship moved. It was not a ship now. It was memory. It was vengeance. It was proof. Inside, Reyes activated the lance. There were no final words. No dramatic speech. Just a breath. Just a memory of Earth, of a blue sky, of laughter, of a world that had refused to kneel. He thought of the child's drawing from the last message, "We'll come back." And with one command, he made that promise real. The lance fired. The sky cracked. The crust of the Zark homeworld split like glass. The Singularity punched through the capital's core like a spear of gravity and light, collapsing the node at the center of Viarachnal's control web. All across orbit, the possessed ships froze. Crew members screamed as the influence was ripped from their minds. AI systems shattered under feedback. The swarm crumbled. And below, the capital fell into fire and silence. The Omen, burned and broken, drifted upward as the rebel fleet moved in to secure what was left. Reyes, injured and quiet, sat in his command chair, watching the last flames fade from the once invincible world. Astra's voice came, quiet and uncertain. "It's over." But Reyes shook his head slowly. "No," he whispered. "It's just begun." In the days that followed, systems began to declare independence. Colonies flew Earth's symbol, not as a government, but as a memory. A warning. A seed. No one knew where Reyes went. Some said he died when the Omen vanished into the debris field. Others believed he was still out there, watching, waiting. What they did know was this: humanity had returned, not as rulers, not as conquerors, but as proof that even when erased, a people with enough will could become legend. And in the black silence of space, far beyond known stars, a signal blinked once. Then again. Waiting.